Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's so great to be back. I filmed the intro and the outro of this video 3 times now because I originally thought that I'd be able to fit all of first and second year in one video. Sat down to film it, felt like a lot, so I then thought I could just put all of first year in one video, started editing, realized I had over an hour of content, and after editing a good bit I found that even just the first half was a good 20 minutes and I didn't want to be overwhelming everyone with huge long videos. So this is going to be part 1 of who knows how many. This is going to be my PhD application, the few months before my PhD started, and the whole first semester of my PhD, including my beginning and sort of a bit about my program, and the first at least couple of weeks of my PhD where I was getting in on the research area and starting on my literature review, and then of course starting my YouTube channel as well. Part 2 then is going to be the rest of my first years, and then after that we will also have content around the second year of my PhD as well. So be sure to stick around for part 2 of this video. Be sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss that video. Really quickly before we get into that, I just wanted to share with you that I do have a new Instagram account. It's at PhD and Productivity, and on there I'm sharing much more short form content. I'm starting to post pretty much every day there and then trying to engage as much as possible on stories and in the DMs. Okay, so first things first, talking about the application process. I do have an entire video that's dedicated to my sort of journey from a young child up to getting into my PhD program. So if you want more details as to how I got into this PhD program, that will have a little bit more information or how I got to that point. But essentially, the way that I ended up applying to a PhD was that a professor for one of the classes that I was taking in my master's recommended that I get into a PhD in computer science. I then got in touch with another professor who I believe was the head of school of computer science in my university at the time, told him a bit about my background, being that it was maths and statistics and that I have like less computer science experience, and wondering if I would be actually suitable for a PhD in computer science. And he then recommended to me a specific program that was going to be in my university and 2 other universities in Dublin. And this is part of a Centre for Research Training, which essentially means that it's sort of a program that's usually funded by an outside body, so not necessarily funded by your university. It's a bit more broad than just having your university where you have your PhD. Usually that means there's some extra things that go along with doing the PhD, but essentially the whole idea with this program was that it would be sort of leading people towards perhaps more industry roles, so trying to get people involved in industry a bit more. So the idea is that we're meant to do an internship as part of the program, and also we have a bunch of different talks from industry partners throughout the program as well, so that we get to know a bit more about how the types of stuff that we're doing with our research can be used in industry. I applied to this program in March of 2019, which was just in the second semester of my master's program. And in terms of the process, it wasn't a usual PhD application, because oftentimes when you're applying for a PhD, you need to know exactly what you're going to be working on and you have to fill out an application with that in mind. And essentially you have to know what kind of supervisor you want to work with and all of that kind of thing, whereas this was very different. You didn't actually need to have any real sense of what your topic was going to be, except for perhaps a general interest area. So the application really more so was about your transcript, your industry experience, if any, the kinds of classes that you've done, and why you would be a suitable candidate for this program based on your experience. So that was what I did. I filled out this application, and then I had 2 interviews with different people from the Centre for Research Training within the sort of April-May period, I'd want to say. And I found out that I was accepted to the program, I think in around May. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that I knew before starting my summer internship for that summer, I knew going into that summer internship that I had gotten into the program. And that was the only PhD program that I applied to. My intention was that if I didn't get into this program, I then would have tried to apply for more specific programs if there was a project available where somebody was looking for somebody to work on a specific project, then I would have applied for one of those. I think because I still didn't have much experience in computer science or really in any large computer science projects, I wouldn't have necessarily known what specifically I wanted to work on, and I would have preferred to go for one that was chosen by a supervisor and working on that. ideally in the area of recommender systems if that was possible. So that was the application process for me. In the few months leading up to the PhD then, so the few months before I started the PhD, I was doing a 4-month summer internship for a research sort of group in my university. And that was my first time really actually working on a proper research project myself in the area of computer science. At the same time I was working on my master's thesis, but that was more in the area of sociology and data analytics. It was definitely new for me, and even writing up that thesis was definitely a great start for me because I didn't have a thesis as part of my undergraduate degree, so that was my first time really writing anything like that. But anyways, the research internship was a really great way for me to sort of just start working on projects myself and get a bit more confidence in developing the code myself and coming up with ideas. And I had a really supportive professor working with me, which really helped sort of build up my confidence in that area, and it was definitely a great experience and sort of a good thing to do before the PhD because it was involving the sort of technical skills that I needed to work on, as well as having those research skills that I needed to work on as well. So it was a good couple of months of experiencing what it might be like in the PhD before really getting started. Then the first semester of my PhD was a bit different than you might have in other PhD programs. Again, because ours is a Centre for Research Training, that means it's typically a lot more structured than other programs. So some of the requirements that we have first is that we have to do a 6-week bootcamp when we get started. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Another thing is that we have to do 30 credits of classes, which is somewhere between 4 and 6 classes depending on if they're 5 or 10 credits. Typically they're 5, but you might have a few 10 credit modules in our university. We also have to do either an industry placement, which is really more so recommended, or a research internship with another university, which is somewhere between 4 and 6 months in duration. We also have a couple of seminars that go on, so we usually have to give different talks and things like that as part of the program. We also have to do a summer course each year, so a 1-week long conference, I guess, that goes on, and we have to attend 2 of those and plan an additional 1 of those, I think, in the 4 years. And there's usually a couple of other things that sort of crop up, but you can see that I think there's a lot more typically than you would have with a normal PhD. Bootcamp was around 6 weeks. It was 2 weeks in my university, 2 weeks in one of the other universities, and 2 weeks in one of the other universities. And essentially the idea was that because our program is all based on machine learning, because that means that we can have so many students coming from such different backgrounds. Some people will be coming from a pure computer science background. Some people will be coming more from my background, sort of a maths or statistics or potentially even physics background. Some people are coming from an engineering background, and some people are coming in just with more industry experience. Everyone's coming with such different backgrounds, and the idea of the bootcamp is it gets everyone to a similar level. It sort of means that there's a good few classes around each of the key areas of statistics, machine learning, research in general, but there's also a lot of talks from industry partners, so we get to hear from a few of the industry partners about the type of work that they do, which is a really good way for us to start getting thinking about what type of internship we want to be involved with, or what kind of work we could do in general. Another thing that we had was a group project, which was quite good for getting to know other people in the program and just getting a bit more interaction across the universities. Most of the teams had at least one person from each university, so it was a good way to just get to know some of the people in the group. One thing that was really great, and probably my favorite thing about the whole bootcamp, was all of the different talks we had in different transferable skills. So we had someone come in and do this sort of creative problem solving workshop with us, which was really interesting. We had someone come in and do an entrepreneurship workshop with us. Another talk that we had was really good, was all around presentation skills, and especially for being in computer science or anyone in science really, there's so much jargon that we use, and trying to sort of break down that and trying to see how can we communicate our research better to a more general audience. Another workshop we had was just around career skills and just thinking about our career throughout the time that we have. So I think that was pretty much it. The only other thing that we also had as part of the bootcamp, which I know is no longer part of the program, during the time we came in with no idea who our supervisors were going to be, so we actually did a lot of matchmaking with supervisors throughout the program. We sort of did like speed dating with different professors that we might be interested in working with, So having a little bit of a quick chat with them and then getting into more focused one-on-ones with the professors that we wanted to work with more, and then deciding on which supervisors you would like to work with, and then, you know, there would be a decision backwards if they wanted to work with us. And that was quite, I think, a difficult process for a lot of people, because for my group anyways, there was a lot of people really interested in computer vision, part of machine learning or AI, where you're looking at image recognition, maybe a self-driving car who would have the video where they're looking around, images from health data, trying to process those and classify those automatically. So there was a lot of people interested in that, and a lot of people interested in one particular professor, and that I think was quite difficult for a lot of people. I was quite lucky insofar as I think I was the only person really interested in recommender systems, and I have a second supervisor as well who's more so in the area of sports science, because my research is in applied machine learning, applied recommender systems in sports science. And in case you don't know, recommender systems are basically anything that generates recommendations. So for example, Netflix recommendations, Amazon recommendations, but mine is based around recommendations for marathon training. So I needed sort of a supervisor who was involved more so in the computer science and the machine learning, and one who was in more so the sports science to have that domain knowledge, which has been really, really helpful. So supervisors got chosen during that time as well, and I think that was pretty much it for the bootcamp. I want to say mid-November that we were finished that. So we started on September 30th and then went on to mid-November with the bootcamp. And then I actually took a little bit of a holiday, because it's never too soon to take time off. Really important, I think, to make sure that you're scheduling holidays. That's one thing that I've learned in this entire process. Make sure you schedule in those holidays. You don't want it to ever be the case that you're forced to take time off just because you're either exhausted or feeling unwell because of not taking care of yourself. You want it to be something that's coming up regularly so that you do have that time off. I think I was much better doing that in first year than I was in second year, and we'll see the impact of that. So I went on a cruise to Miami and to different areas in Central America, and it was a great cruise, had a great time. What a good time to be alive. That was the last time that I got to go away pre-pandemic, so it was really good. It was around 10 days I think I went away for, and it was such a good time. When I came back, it was sort of early December, and obviously, well, at least in my university, most people tend to take off a little bit of time at the end of December for Christmas and even into early January as well. Essentially, I had a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then a little bit of time early January that was more so focused on getting to know the research area that I was involved with. Once I had a sense of who my supervisor was, I did do a little bit of reading throughout the bootcamp, just little bits here and there, and more so of their papers and getting to know those. And then over the first couple of weeks in December and early January, I was then reading a lot of the papers that they had referenced in their papers and getting started trying to understand the research area further. So during that time, I read a lot of papers around sort of marathon performance prediction and training plan recommendation, and basically just trying to understand the area a bit in general. And that was pretty much it for semester one. I spent a good bit of time reading and just trying to make notes on the general area. I think the first sort of month where it was really properly working on the PhD, which was December, I think that was definitely where I started to feel like it was a bit challenging, not knowing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And just looking ahead and seeing that there's so much time in front of you and not knowing what exactly you're going to be working on. And I think that's one thing that led me to even starting the YouTube channel, was just to sort of start to track the progress throughout the several years of the program and to be able to share with other people how it was at the different stages. I think specifically first year, it was just a time where there's not really a sense of what exactly you should be working on, and that's why I made that first video about what things to do in first year. Essentially, when you feel like you don't know what you should be doing, there's always something you could be doing, and that's just an example of 20 possible things that you could be working on really. But I definitely feel that was the initial struggle, I think, until maybe mid-January, until I had a first proper meeting with my supervisor. The first maybe 5 or 6 weeks of reading and just trying to understand the research area, it was definitely a little bit difficult to stay motivated during that time of not knowing exactly where things would be going. But I did try my best to just read as much as possible and keep track of all the papers I was reading and start to write up some of those notes. In early January, I decided to start this YouTube channel. Actually, I think it was end of December I posted my first video, I think just a couple days before New Year's. I decided to start posting on this channel about my PhD student experience and basically about productivity during a PhD. I found that there wasn't a huge amount of people on YouTube talking about how to be really productive during a PhD. I'd be the kind of person who would have always been used to working full-time while doing my studies full-time, and I found that I was not quite used to having just a normal PhD 9 to 5 and not having other things going on. So I did also work a little bit part-time during that first year. So I worked a couple of hours on a Wednesday and a couple of hours on a Saturday teaching in the drama school that I would have gone to speech and drama classes from a young age and had started teaching in from the time I was 18. But other than that, a lot of my evenings and weekends were pretty free. And that was definitely an unusual experience for me, and I found that it was difficult for me to stay productive when that was the case. So I really actually for the first time had to start learning how to really manage my time and how to organize my schedule, because I was so used to getting things done in the only time I had to get it done. The whole time in my undergrad and masters I felt I was very pushed for time when it came to working on assignments. There was no free time. If I was to skip doing something at one time, I would not have gotten it done. So I started spending a lot of time listening to different books on Audible on productivity and just learning about different ways to improve productivity. And I started learning so much and really, really enjoying what I had learned about and feeling like it would be definitely a good thing to share with other people. I'd sort of always wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I was a bit nervous about doing it. I was definitely very afraid about people seeing it or people not watching or anything really. I had all of the fears, and I didn't tell anyone about the YouTube channel for several months till really I got to, I think, 1,000 subscribers. I didn't think I told anyone until then. Those first couple of months of making videos, I was really just making videos whenever I could. I didn't want to make them at home because we had construction going on and it was super loud, and I also didn't really want people to know. So sometimes I would make videos in my university in a free classroom at like 7 a.m. when nobody was in, and usually I would just try and make them whenever nobody was home. But that was a really great thing that I think I started, because obviously we've led to having so many more of you here, and it's been a really great way for me to meet a lot more PhD students and learn a lot more about different people's research. I feel like I've gotten a lot more confidence in starting the channel and just gotten a lot better at talking, which I think is really important skill to have for PhD students. I really, really think it's been one of the best experiences. So I do recommend anybody who's interested, just go for it. There's a few people you can follow that would really help with that process. So Catherine Manning would be the main person that I follow and have watched all of her videos, and she's been the person who I feel has really helped me grow. So I definitely recommend checking her out. I think as well, we'll get into it in a second, but what was good I think about my channel was that a lot of people I think who are sharing information for PhD students are all people who have finished their PhDs, and they're just sharing information retrospectively, which is great. And I think those people are so amazing for doing that, and I think it's so helpful to have those videos. But there wasn't really anyone at the time, I felt, who was sharing their journey during the PhD and really sharing a lot of content around what's going on at the different stages of the PhD. So that was just something that I felt was important to do, and I think that a lot of you at least are sticking around to watch these videos, so you've obviously felt the same way. So thanks to everybody who has been following the journey, really appreciate it. I also was very careful in the beginning not to mention my university or the program that I was involved with. I wasn't sure if my university would be accepting of that. However, when people did eventually find out about the channel, I think almost a year later, they were super open and super supportive and actually share it a lot of the time on the Center for Research Training's Twitter, and my supervisor was so supportive, sent it around to other supervisors. So I know that everyone is supportive now, but at the time I was quite careful not to mention my university. And I do think if you're going to be mentioning any names of your university or anything like that, it would probably be worth checking out if your university is okay with that. I'm still pretty careful. I still don't really mention it a huge amount. Obviously you can find out what university I'm in and what program I'm in pretty easily, but I think it's better to just try and keep it more general and not to mention it too much. That is it for this part 1 of this series. I hope now this will be a good thing that I can end up splitting this over 3rd and 4th year of my PhD as well, just a sort of recap of all of these important moments of my PhD. So a quick reminder, this was the first part. So basically the first half of my PhD, including the application process, the first few months leading up to the PhD, the first few months of actually doing the PhD, all just getting started, how I started my YouTube channel and all of that. The next video is going to be the first real proper semester of getting into the PhD research. I'd already done work on the literature review before, now working on some actual programming projects and getting the first couple of papers. Then how I got into a startup competition and spending a couple of weeks working on a startup based around productivity, and as well some classes that I was taking and assisting with the teaching for. And then I will also be having videos coming around second year of my PhD, including a really big review that I had to do as part of the process, which led me into a PhD candidate versus a PhD student. I also had work on a second research question, a really big chunk of work, and another paper around that. And I also had my PhD internship. So we'll also have one or maybe a couple of videos coming about that. So do be sure that you're sticking around by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. And thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here, and thank you a huge amount to my wonderful members. You really make it possible for me to keep making these videos, and I really, really appreciate you. So thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next video.